was very strong, as a fact, stronger than that. And that there must be a mission that I had in the world, why I didn't die like my two siblings. And the other one, that being so strong and with a mission, that probably I could do everything, right? Like if I was able to defeat death, I was able to do some things. We don't share the bruises. We don't share enough how hard it was. We share the results. We're conditioned to celebrate success and sort of like how you made it, but all of us have bruises. All of us have felt the door closing down, and like how you have to knock again, and how you have to fight and take the endurance and start healing the bleeding that happens to you every time you get a rejection, every time you get a no, every time you get your hopes down, or that someone is not seeing you. And that was the case for me, and that is the case for everyone. Suppressing your Latinidad and who you are, let alone your Latinidad, yourself, right? Like to try to fit into it's almost like if you're like whatever size and you want to be a size super zero, and you're like, it doesn't fit, and it hurts, and it avoids you sharing your shape and your true self, which is the only formula for success. It's going to turn out okay. And when you are able to sort of like get into your system that idea that you're doing the best of what you can, or like you're doing your best with what you can and the tools that you have, and that life will turn okay because you're doing your very best.
You should use those skills, those abilities that you have as a woman, and use them to trick the system. Those are the things that you say.
Aquí escuchamos, aprendemos y crecemos juntas. Bienvenida a Rollos de Mujeres.
Today with us is Claudia Romo-Edelman. She's a recognized speaker, trainer, and consultant for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Claudia is the founder of the We Are All Human Foundation and the Hispanic Start, and has worked for 25 years with internationally recognized institutions, including the United Nations, the Global Fund, and the World Economic Forum. Claudia speaks 6 languages, is a mom of 2, wife, and co-host of La Latina Podcast, and the list goes on and on. Welcome to Rollos de Mujeres, Claudia. How are you?
Me encanta Rollos de Mujeres. Thank you so much for having me.
I am very excited because I've been following your work for a long time. You come to Texas very often, promoting all the work that you are doing. And I just love a Latina. And we talk about the Latina concept later on the podcast. But a woman and a Latina making these waves in this country. We were waiting for this for a long time. I've been living in the U.S. for the past 18 years, Claudia, and I never seen this before. Así que thank you so much for all the work.
Absolutely, and so much pleasure. And yes, making waves is something that my father would say as I was a kid. I remember saying like, that's the only thing you need know how to do, to make waves and to do parties and to bring people together. So I'm happy that is being used for good.
Thank you so much, Claudia. We're going to start talking from the start. I want to know more about you, your childhood. Where did you come from, and where did you get all that inspiration to do the work that you do today?
Thank you so much. So again, rollos de mujeres, increíble, porque hay muchos rollos de mujeres that are positive, and we should just like get more enrolladas, no, to make more change for us. So I am the daughter of 2 basketball players, my mother and dad. My mom was a professional basketball player. I come from a matriarcado, from very strong women that taught me the values of hard work, resilience, family, and the exercise. Being my mother, such an athlete, and coming from that world, I'm the middle one of the 3 siblings that my parents had. Mm-hmm. And very sadly, my siblings, both the older and the younger, died when they were babies, 18 months old, which led not only to a great sadness in the family, but also to the sense for me growing up that I was very strong, as a fact, stronger than that. And that there must be a mission that I had in the world, why I didn't die like my 2 siblings. And the other one, that being so strong and with a mission, that probably I could do everything, right? Like if I was able to defeat death, I was able to do some things. So I came up, I grew up with a sense of, like everything is possible, and being very optimistic after seeing my mother recover also from her grief and her healing by seeing and exposing ourselves to the suffering of others that was greater than herself. So we went a lot to orphanages. We went a lot to places where there were people that really had it hard, so that she could say like, well, I lost 2 kids, but like I still have my legs and my daughter and my health and my hope. And so I grew up in a very supportive environment, full of hope, full of optimism, but also possibilism, understanding that everything is possible, and that probably I had a mission to do bigger things because I was still here.
And thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry for the loss, but we love to see the human behind all the success and all the hard work. And as a woman, I thank you for sharing those moments, Claudia. I bet it was a lot of pressure too, right? Like feeling that you were here for a reason and that you had to work harder. How did you manage that to make it in a positive way and not becoming a victim of your own circumstances?
I never thought of myself that way. I just only knew that a lot of my, background as a kid was related to the fact that I was alive and that my mother had responsibilities and so on. But when I was a teenager in Mexico City, I had this experience of a series of earthquakes in Mexico that shook up the entire city. And so many of us, most of us, just like left our houses and our apartments and started looking for our families and friends, and buildings were falling apart one after the other in different neighborhoods and so on, and there were like a series of earthquakes. So I remember that seeing how in the middle of chaos there was like this self-leadership that emerged, self-organizing principles, that people were like, here, let's gather all the food, here, all the shelter. And someone said like, come, let's go and sweep the streets to see whether there are people trapped in the buildings. And I went with that group, and we were walking and looking at the ashes, and it was so confusing. And all of a sudden I just felt that I heard a voice, but I was not sure. But anyways, I started screaming and saying like, here, stop, come here. And so there was this guy who turned around and said like, what? And I said like, I think I heard a voice. And he said like, think or heard. And I just looked at him and started screaming even louder. So he came to me, and by the time he was there, both of us heard a voice. It was clear. So both of us started shouting like, come here. And 2 more people came, and the 4 of us were screaming, come here, we need a hand. And so at some point we were enough people so that we could start moving that wall until there was a breakthrough after a long time of pushing, and light came into the hole, and there were the eyes of this girl looking at us. And so it was like, you got me, right? And and that was the first ever time in which I felt useful, and that was an incredible and overwhelming feeling. But also it was the first time in which it made sense, right? Like my father always said like, oh, you're so loud. And I was like, wow, it's so great to be loud. And I think that I got that sense of like being me, just who I am, was able to do something good. When I saw that mother hugging that girl, it was like really like a connection of the dots, like being loud and me and the mission and the. So I really felt overwhelmed with the feeling, and I been lucky that that was the first that I've been doing that for the last 25 years, which is to make waves, to be loud, and to take the attention of people to things that are so precious and that we sometimes don't even see or hear or don't have the time to pay attention to things. So I've been lucky enough to be working in the most incredible of the organizations for the most ambitious of the goals, and that I'm devoted to, for the first time in my life, to something that is personal, which is my Latino community.
I love that, because that means that you, from an early age, started noticing those skills and those passions that you had, and you put those to work in a direction that is making so much noise right now in the whole world. But I know that you starting working for the United Nations was not an easy story. And people may think, oh man, she made it. She was there, and she has been making so much. But you started from zero as well. And it is a story. And I know because I listened to the last episode on your podcast, and you guys have to go and check it out because it's such an inspirational story. But you share about how you started with the United Nations, and it was not because the doors were open and everything was set up for you. You were opening doors yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about that story, Claudia?
It was actually the first time that I told that story that my colleague Andrea Mancera has been telling me I have to talk about that story and so on. So I finally did. And it felt very good. Because I think that you're right. We don't share the bruises. We don't share enough how hard it was. We share the results. We're conditioned to celebrate success and sort of like how you made it. But all of us have bruises. All of us have felt the door closing down, and like how you have to knock again, and how you have to fight and take the endurance and start healing the bleeding that happens to you every time you get a rejection, every time you get a no, every time you get your hopes down, or that someone is not seeing you. And that was the case for me, and that is the case for everyone that I know from the Latino community, because we are facing these unconscious bias that constantly are putting barriers in front of us and constraining us, even just for the fact of being Latinos, right? Like, because there's a stereotyping and these unconscious elements that are put into our way only because of who we are. And I think that for me, like becoming a diplomat was something that I was promised by a friend of my mother. That promise was like a fake promise. She didn't really have a job for me. She made me work for a long time for free. And then when I came to the embassy, she had me a little bit like hiding in a room and working sort of like just for her, until someone discovered me on the way to the toilet. They were like, oh, who are you? We've been seeing someone in there, but we don't know who you are. And I was like, oh, I'm the next employee of the embassy. And at some point, like it exploded, and everybody was like, this other woman is faking this girl about getting a job. And it literally became the first and most important fight of my life so far, where I was like, wait, I was promised a job. I was working for it for years. And like when they told me there was no job for me, I started crying for an hour and a half in front of this incredibly high level diplomat of Mexico. And I was like, ah. But then, like I was fighting until I got my job. And I think that at the end of the day, we as Latinos have always to remember that we come from people that fight, that we have seen it firsthand, our ancestors, like 2 to 3 jobs, bleeding hands, so that we can have the chances that we have, so that we can be the first generation of Latinos that is in college, that is getting in corporate jobs, that is having these, like opportunities we have. So we should not be facing away from risks or from fights. We can do hard things. We know it. We come from resilient, resourceful people. So embrace the fight. Know that we're that transition generation that has to take a couple of bruises, knock the door again, and keep on going, so that our job is to finish the job. Because the hard job is done by our ancestors. So we have to just finish the job so that the next gen can have it in a way that every Latino can be fully paid, fully respected, and fully valued, where there's no stereotyping, but on the contrary, a recognition of the contributions that we bring to the country.
I love that you fought for what you deserve. And also, I love that you are speaking up, because most of Latinos in this country, especially women, and I'm going to speak for myself, we are extremely shy, and we are extremely... we use the word humble, but we sometimes confuse the word humble with being quiet and not asking for what we deserve. We are so grateful just by the fact that we are here and we got the opportunity to cross the border, to have a job. And it's a mindset, Claudia, that for some of us takes years to remove from our brains. And I'm going to give you an example, like Latinos here, and that was me for a long time, having an accent. Oh my gosh, I wasn't even confident to do a story on TV on English, even if I knew the grammar and I was very respectful for my work. But I was so afraid because I felt like I needed to respect the language. But I love that you just stand up and you say, this is who we are. And we need to change the narrative of the Latinos in the U.S. because I remember a couple years ago, some politicians were calling us violadores, drug dealers, flojos. And I know there is all kind of people in our country, but the majority of us, we are not like that. So, and I know you had a lot of frustration too, and that's why you started working on this amazing foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and your feelings of everything that you say?
What you just said is I think that the common, the shared experience that we all have. So as a community, we so often focus on the fragmentation, or not the fragmentation, on our differences. Mm-hmm. No, I come from this country, you on that country. No, I grew up in this country. No, I got like this. We're so creative in focusing on our difference. What we should really, really be focusing on is like our fight. Mm-hmm. We have the same, all of us fear accentism. At some point, you were told to speak one way or the other, or you were scared of actually letting your Latinidad shine because it comes with a price. Every time, you probably have seen it. We've seen it in the movies. We've seen it everywhere, how hard our parents and ancestors have been treated because of having an accent, how much discrimination happens when that comes through. So you try to avoid that piece, but by avoiding it, you're almost like suppressing your Latinidad and who you are, let alone your Latinidad, yourself, right? Like to try to fit into it's almost like if you're like whatever size and you want to be a size super zero and you're like, it doesn't fit and it hurts and it avoids you sharing your shape and your true self, which is the only formula for success. Like pretending to be someone else doesn't get you high. By being yourself is how you go forward. And that's how I started looking at what the World Human Foundation could do, which is to try to understand how are we going to elevate the potential of Latinos. So the World Human Foundation has been in existence for 6 years. I think that the first 5 years of our existence, we try to focus on 3 main things, which is the unity of Latinos, because we were very fragmented, the pride of Latinos, because we were ashamed of being Latinos, we were not educated about our own contributions to the country, and access to opportunities, access to networks, access through corporate America to better jobs and better opportunities. And now I think that we're really trying to understand where the best contribution of the World Human Foundation can be for the Latino community, given that all of these 5 years we've been very devoted to have Latinos talk to Latinos about the power of Latinos. But the data shows that that's working and it's already taking off. So do we really need to be there on that space, or can we move to the next intervention that could help us get to the next level of elevating our potential? And I think that we're looking at how do we actually use the World Human Foundation platform and power and assets and network to transform all the decision makers of the country into allies for Latinos. So it's less about talking to Latinos about Latinos, it's talking more to the rest of the country about Latinos and transforming them into allies. So I am very excited about what the World Human Foundation strategic interventions can be to ensure that every time we can be fulfilling the dreams of our ancestors and making sure that every Latino is seen and heard and valued.
I want to say 2 points here. First, I'm pretty sure you know that you are impacting a lot of people, but I want to let you know that I'm one of them, because before we all are human, I had no data telling me what Latinos' worth is in the country. And every time I go and pitch a customer for all the work I do for my podcast and my social media campaigns, there was always she's Latina, we're going to pay her less and less and less. And after I found out about your foundation, I drug all that data. And every time I go and I pitch a campaign, I use those facts, that data to say, this is who we are, this is what we represent, and this is our worth. Así que muchísimas gracias, Claudia. Te puedo decir que some of my deals have been closed thanks to all that information. So thank you so much for doing that. And second, I love what you say about Latinos getting into those places that are decision makers, because we are tired of being on the shades. And I was thinking before recording this episode, because most of my content is in Spanish, because I love my community and I love feeding my community with positive information and education. But also I feel like we got to make more noise over there. And to be able to do that, we have to challenge ourselves too. And I told you at the start, excuse my accent, the same thing I've been doing for 20 years. And I love that you say, here's no excuses for any accent. This is who you are. So that was my intention of doing this episode in English as well, because we want to make waves in other areas, not just within our own community. But now let's talk about Rollos de Mujeres, Claudia, because you are such a successful person. I see you everywhere. I see you in different organizations nationwide and with the leaders of the country, not just Latinos, but all kind of people. And I love that. But at the end of the day, you are a human too. You are a woman and you have Rollos de Mujeres. And I want to talk about motherhood, because I know you started very earlier your career, but also you have 2 kids. Well, I say 2 kids, but they are in college already, both of them?
Yep.
So please tell us, to all the moms that we struggle with following our dreams, but also trying to be the mom that our kids need, how do you balance that demands of your high-profile career with being a mother?
And that is really one of the reasons why we created the podcast A La Latina, the playbook to succeed being your authentic self, because I realized that Latinas have it even harder than any other group in America. So we are the minority within the minority. We're the gap between the gap. So it's really like, and so I saw the data. I am very data driven and I love that you love it. And we saw that we lacked role models. We don't know exactly what to do and how to be mothers and at the same time work and so on. We lack role models in corporations, in like in our daily lives as Latinas and so on. We lack networks. So we don't have those networks of support that can help us progress, be promoted and so on. And the third thing is we didn't have the playbooks, the manuals. Like how do you do networking within a corporation? How do you behave? Like now you made it to this space, now what? And so we created this podcast to provide the playbooks, understand how we can start building communities of support among the trailblazer Latinas and the rising Latinas that want to get more understanding of them and then shine a light in those that have made it. And unfortunately, for our community, there's less than 50 women in the Fortune 500 companies in the C-suite. So we are identifying them and showcasing them in our podcast. And a lot of the times, the main struggle we have as women is motherhood. Right? Like for all the guests that we have had, it is that balancing act between growing and providing, between guilt and an example. How do you stay on top of the things with the 20 hours more a week that we have of house chores that we have to do? And how do you make sure that you do that while connecting emotionally, physically, academically with your kids and so on? It's never easy. There is not a single formula. People juggle, people struggle, people go on. And the only thing that I have learned from the experience in the podcast is one sentence, which is, it's going to be okay. It's going to turn out okay. And when you are able to sort of like get into your system that idea that you're doing the best of what you can, or like you're doing your best with what you can and the tools that you have, and that life will turn okay because you're doing your very best, and your kids will come to a place and will in which, you know, like they will turn around and say like, did you really didn't be with me during my homework in the afternoons? And we want to turn forward and look at our kids, you know, like being successful, going to college, living their lives, having the understanding that they will be okay as well. I think that that's the best that we can do.
Yeah, and I see a lot of your videos. For people who hasn't followed Claudia on social media, I'm going to be adding the links on the description of this episode of her social media, the podcast, and also the foundations she is the founder of. And I see a lot of content with your kids. I love when you share photos with your son, when you visit your son. I saw that your daughter just had a prom day. So I just love that you don't pretend to be, you know, like a high type kind of person just because of the position that you have or the professional things that you are doing. You always share that you are a mom, that you are a wife. You share photos with your husband. So thank you for doing that, because we need honest people in the platforms, in all social media platforms, because I am tired to see those perfect women out there that make me feel guilty because I don't look that way every day. Oh, I don't have the perfect life. So thank you for sharing all that too, Claudia.
And thank you for the feedback. It's great to hear. It's great to hear. Yeah. I am glad to get your sense. Thank you.
No, thank you. Also, I want to say something. This is not on your bio, but you should add it to your bio. You are a fashion icon, Claudia. I love the way you dress, the way you take care of yourself, the way you present yourself professionally and also personally. But I feel like a lot of women, this is another Rollos de Mujeres, coming from a Latino culture, sometimes specifically Mexican culture, because I have a lot of Venezuelan friends and a lot of Colombian friends, and they know they are pretty, they feel pretty, and they showcase them as pretty women, and they don't feel guilt for that. But coming from a Mexican culture, we have those things on our heads that we shouldn't look too sexy, we shouldn't look too pretty, we shouldn't drag so much attention. And I work in original Mexican radio station. So just imagine my perception of looking sexy and all the stuff. And I went against it, and they fired me for the same reason. And that's stuck in my head. And I felt like being sexy or trying to get attention was dirty or was not good seen, you know? But I love that you, and actually you mentioned that on the last episode on your podcast, you should use those skills, those abilities that you have as a woman, and use them to trick the system. Those are the things that you say. Please tell all of our listeners of Rollos de Mujeres why we should do that and why it's okay to do that.
Beauty is an intrinsic value of our cultures. I don't know anybody that would say, please be ugly, just, you know, like just study, but don't do your nails, don't look at, no, estar bonitas, es parte de nosotros. Yeah. And I think that we cannot deny who we are. That's why we cannot deny our accent. Let's embrace our accent. And you know what, Anna, you and I should make a bet that in 5 years we'll have a lot of gringos trying to pretend to have a Latino accent and so on. And you'll see. Let's keep on it because I know it's coming. But I think that understanding who you are and embracing your beauty, but also being very clear, and that makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. I want to feel as good and as healthy and as strong as I want because it makes me feel confident. Mm-hmm. It gives me a sense of fulfillment, and I want to see my daughter also fulfilled and feeling, because that's a privilege that I think that Latina women have. Like we can express it, and it's you know, like we're beautiful. Mm-hmm. But I also want to make sure that we understand how a double sword it could be, because Latinas, particularly Latinas, the perception of Latinas comes straight to our physical attributes. Yeah. So most people think of Latinas as fire, sexy, beautiful, and that is great. but that takes the place of smart, intelligent, capable, hardworking entrepreneur. So you have to make sure that you leave space for the completeness of you.
Yeah.
I'm not only, like, as we said, like, there's not only a pretty face here. There's like smarts and hard work and family oriented. And I want to make sure that in the mindset of people, everything has a space, not only one thing that dominates. So I think that that's when we have it, like, that's when we need to use our smarts as Latinas to say, I want to look beautiful, but I want to talk smart. And I want my work and my family and my values to also being appreciated. And how are we going to make sure that not only one thing is very prominent? So when you're like absolutely on the nails and the earrings and the this, you have to compensate to make sure that that's not taking over in people's minds, because there's only so much space that people have in their mind. So make sure that you present yourself accordingly.
Yeah. And also, I have to say that you have something, Claudia, that you attract people. And I think that's very common to see on the Latino community because we like to be nice to people. We like to open our doors. We serve the only plate that we have on our table to the guest. That's our nature. How do you use those, I think, like cultural things that you have to open up opportunities in the corporate America or in the leadership world, and how we as women, as Latinas in this country, can use all those skills that we have to work with different networks? Because I feel like we are insulated. We are working in islands. I feel like, oh, I am a podcaster, you stick to this group. Oh, I work on TV, you stick to this group. But we got to start mixing with different kind of people. And you are an expert on that, Claudia.
I'm not sure that I am an expert, but I do know of the power of networks and how important it is for us to be, like smart about it. And I am so optimistic about like the future of the Latino community. And that's why I am putting the Latina Podcast as a resource, because I know that the only thing we need is the tools, the resources, the examples, and then the networks. But I would say in a scale, I would start by educating myself on the data so that I feel powerful. So what you just said is like, go to places like the World Human Foundation Hispanic Star and take a bath of optimism about how powerful Latinos are, about our numbers, so that you feel equipped. It's almost like taking spinach and your Popeye, you're going to get strong. Number two is make sure that you understand what are the goals that you have and what are the goals that we have as a Latino community. We need to be in the room where it happens. We need to be paid more. We need to have the opportunities that we have. So we have to remove barriers. We have to remove stereotypes, and we have to show up as one. So don't criticize other Latinos. Get together with other Latinos. Unify with Latinos. Take the strength of the data to get right, but do it in a group. So show up. Be part of affinity groups, be part of your church, Latino associations, anything that is Latino, show up. The more we show up, the stronger we're going to know we are. Yeah. And I think that the last piece is be very conscious and very intentional about the power that we need to take. We're ready. You said it. We're done with being in the shadow. Now let's embrace power. We haven't been given the power. We haven't been powerful. But we're ready. So how are we going to make sure that we're equipped and trained to be powerful? Because we're going to get that. People like me are going to start looking at ways to provide power channels so that we can get to where the power is. And that's going to be very much the focus of what we're doing as a World Human Foundation. Personally, I started doing training sessions that are available online as of the next couple of weeks, so that we can train ourselves on how to show up as powerful, how to build networks of support for pleasure and for purpose. How do you do yourself a personal, professional, and leadership development so that you're like fully ready, so that we're like equipped, we're together, and we have the network so that we can take the power that we deserve.
I love it. I'm so excited and looking for it. Yes, I think you are doing an amazing job, Claudia. Thank you so much for your time, for being here in Rollos de Mujeres podcast, but also as a woman, thank you for being a role model. And we are here to support you with everything you need. Finally, my last question for you is what legacy do you hope to leave both personally and professionally?
Wow. So, I would say that I would love to have the people around me see that little girl that I was when I was either on, like listening to the mission that I had, or, like the mission that people thought I had, and that I was able to fulfill it. That I was like, yeah, like I was given a chance to survive, and I hope I used it wise. I would say that for the work that I've been doing for the last 20 years is trying to improve the state of the world one step at a time. And it has fulfilled me dramatically, but I hope that I was able to make a difference to the places where I was by using my skill set and who I was, like understanding my superpowers and use them fully as opposed to shy away from them, which is, I hope, that something that can impregnate in the Latino community.
And I think we don't have to wait to those moments where we are not in this earth. You are making all that while you are here. So thank you so much, Claudia, for being in Rollos de Mujeres. And I'm going to be on the look for those training sessions that you're going to be offering. So if people wants to follow you, where they can find you, which site do you prefer for them to go? And I'm going to be adding all the links on the description, because some people are driving right now. They may be on the gym, or they may be washing dishes. I don't know.
I live and swim on LinkedIn and Instagram, Claudia Romo-Edelman, the websites of Hispanic Star and A La Latina. I'm very much looking forward to keep on growing our network and getting ready to be powerful.
Yes. Thank you, Claudia. Until next time.
Bye. Hasta luego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember to follow us on social media. Also, make sure you check our website, rollosdemujeres.com, because we have a bunch of articles there that are going to be very useful for you. And if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe, you leave a comment, and share this episode with your friends and family. My name is Ana Cruz, your host. Until next time.